if you notice, when I bring my needle through, even though I've stitched quite a lot on this piece and I've left it overnight, this linen is lovely and hollow sounding, and when you bring the needle through you can hear it. You hear this pop. So every time you hear that pop, you know that your linen is lovely and tight. When you get to the edge of satin stitch area here, you can come up and down in the same hole. So this is my penultimate stitch here, up then down, and there's a tiny bit of belly showing there. So I'm going to come up in the same hole as that previous stitch and go down in the same hole here. And I'm just going to put my fingernail in the way, and that should just curve around his little belly like that. So nope, that hasn't really worked all that well. Let's have a look. Might put another stitch behind that, so going back up the shape. There, that's better. Now he's got a little fat belly. I rather like that. And the blue that's showing underneath is of course his leg, so that's stitched separately. Now, next you could work his legs, because you can work those any time at all, because you can use the body to cast on and cast off with and secure the thread, or you can use the wings. But I'm going to come down his body here, his head and his body, just so that you can see how I would work it. Now I'm using a single thread in the brown to create the top of his head and along his back. It's actually a she, isn't it, this bee? So there's a much grander male bird, and unfortunately the male bird is far more colourful. But I think I like the subtlety of this next to the rather loud strawberries. Anyway, I've taken the single thread end, and I'm just going to test it with my second finger just to see which way it goes. And it definitely is smoother going up the way, so I know that every time I take this thread from this end, I need to have the knot in this end. So when it's smoother going towards the end of the thread, it's always the knot end. So I could actually write that down next to the piece on the stitch chart and just say knot. And that's jolly helpful, because I don't need to now test it again and again. So I take the length of thread, and I'm just going to do my usual length to my elbow, snip it off and leave a long thread trailing to one side. Again, you can use the next door area to cast on your stitches. So I'm going to leave my waist knot here in my wing. Well, it's not my wing, it's her wing. And then I just put 3 little stitches. Now some people put a little cross stitch in, some people put a pin stitch, which is going forwards and then backwards into the same hole. But I find with crewel work, it's so forgiving, and you can stitch through it again and again and again with more stitches. You don't want to have any really bulky areas that you're creating with this securing of the thread method. So once I get going, I'll take off that knot as well. So always snip between the knot and the linen. There we go. Keep that for the birds. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to follow the stitch instructions again. And I'm going to stitch across her head. And I come up in the middle of her head and follow the guidelines that are printed on, and just lay your thread down like that with your other hand, and then pop your thread in. Now remember to go well over the outline, the printed blue outline. You can make your bird just slightly bigger than the actual printing if you just aim for that. So long stitch, and then a short stitch, and then I'm going to just go behind that with a 3/4 stitch. So again, to work round that curve, I come up with a long stitch and then make one half the length of the first stitch. So that's the short stitch, and then the 3/4 stitch comes up underneath the half stitch, right next to the first long stitch. So it's a 1, 2, 3 long half, 3/4, and as you see, this 3/4 comes up underneath the half right next to the long, and then you pop your needle down. Keep it straight, Philippa. There you go. And you're working your way around the head. Now, if it doesn't look thick enough when you finish this, you can just go over using exactly the same technique, and you can work that anytime you like. You could do that when you've completed with the second colour as well. So, you know, when I say that Crewel Work's forgiving, it's not for pulling out, it's for covering over again and again. And I think that's something young Katie learned quite soon, that she's got to stop it when she pulls everything out and just leave it in, and then cover it with more stitches or put some decorative stitches on afterwards. So this could be a very smooth edge, or you can make her slightly spiky because it would look like feathers. And I know the designer Trish Burr makes beautiful long and short soft shading with great effect, and people love it because you can leave this edge so that it's really spiky with all the feathers. Okay, so I've stitched from the center of the head to the right, and now I'm going to follow with the back. So if you treat your first stitch as the long, and then I'm going to work 3/4 and long going down here, but actually we're wanting to change the angle, so we're changing from here down to here. So again, I'm going to put in some extra stitches. So this is going to have a very short stitch in here, and then I'm going to come up behind the short stitch really close to the previously worked stitches, and then pop that down. Now if you have a problem with this, just lay your thread down like that. So you could, and I often do, work further down so that you just take your thread and pop it in to the angle you're heading towards. So you can actually see between here and there, you're actually opening out that space. So you'll need 2 or 3 wedge stitches. So I'm just going to do it straight away while I think of it. I don't want to end up down here with a bit of a muddle. Although, as I say, if I did, I'd leave it in and I'd stitch over the top of it. When I'm teaching, it's I often say I've got, you know, if you just put in 3 stitches over the bit that you're not happy with, often it just corrects it so well. And using 3 magic stitches or just little decorative stitches on the top just changes everything. So this Bayer stitch or seeding on the top that you did on the leaf and then the strawberry are just very effective ways of kind of cheating, really. Alright, so I've worked my way down to that piece that I've laid. Now this is the point where you can actually look back across this area. Do you want this edge to be smooth, or do you want it to be slightly spiky? I quite like it like this, but I probably need to show you how to smooth it off. I could give her a slightly more determined look by adding another little stitch at the front. I rather like that. And this area around the edge here, I'm just going to pop in another stitch between the 2 stitches that just look very individual. There.